Hi, this is Gеше Michael Roach with John Bрэdi, the director of the Asian Legacy Library. And we're just going to give you a little background on how the library got started. And so I'll kind of tell some stories from the early days. And then I thought I'd turn it over to John and we could get an update on what's happening nowadays. And we want to inspire you to help us with the Castle Rock Fund, which is like an endowment which will continue to pay the bills for these projects. These projects, I would say it's going to be 700 years. You can say 20 or 25 generations to finish really preserving and recording the greatest spiritual literature tradition in the world, certainly the largest. And I thought you'd like to know some of the story about how we started. So I had graduated from Princeton University, and I was already studying about an hour away in a small Mongolian temple, which John knows about. And then I thought I would like to learn Sanskrit. So I went back to Princeton, and there was an elderly professor, Samuel Atkins, who was a student of Edgerton, who was a great Buddhist Sanskrit scholar, who was a student of Dwight Whitney, who is the father of all Sanskrit studies in America, from Yale. And I asked him, can I sit in on the class? And he said, you're asking to sit in on a class at Princeton that costs $70,000 a year? And I said, yeah. And he said, good for you, I'll do it. And he said, just sit in the back and keep your mouth shut. And I said, okay. And there was one other student like a graduate student, and we audited the course. He said, you're not going to get grade, you're not going to get any credit, you won't be able to get a degree, because I didn't have any money. And he said, okay, if you really want to learn, I'll teach you. And so I started going to classes. I didn't have a car, and I had to take two buses. And sometimes I had to wait for an hour for the buses, and it was unbelievable. And then we became friends, and 60 students started the class. After 3 years, there was just the two of us, the two auditors. And so one day he said, come to the basement, And I'm like, why? And he said, I got to show you something, And he took me into the basement of the classics department. And there was a huge table, a huge machine on a big table, almost filling the room. And there was this quiet, kind of skinny, nerdy guy in the corner, sitting on a chair. And he was playing Hangman, which is a word game.
I remember that.
On a computer with another Greek scholar who was one of my professors. And I said, well, what's the big deal? They're just playing they're playing Hangman on a computer, word games. And he said, no, look carefully. And in the middle of this huge machine is a little plastic disc like this, And I said, what's that? And he said, that's called a CD-ROM.
Amazing.
And I said, what's it do? And he said, it holds data. And I said, well, how much? Because at the time you could put one book on a disc.
Exactly, yeah.
And he said, that holds 5,000 books.
Amazing.
That holds all the Greek literature ever written, ancient Greek literature. And I'm like, wow, how'd you get it into the disc? And he said, oh my gosh, we started in Greece. And we hired Greeks to type the ancient books. And then we found out they couldn't do it because they kept fixing the words. So then we went to Korea. And we finished most of the work in Korea. And I was like, wow, that's awesome,
So Koreans were doing the Greek.
They were doing the Greek input. And then later the Philippines and some Thais. And they finished 5,000 volumes of ancient Greek literature. and they put it on this disc, and they gave it away. They didn't. They sold it through the University of California at Irvine. And so I went home, and I was like, oh, my gosh, what if we could do that with the ancient literature of the Asian tradition, Wow.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool, And I the next time I went to Sanskrit class, I asked my professor, could we make one of those discs for Asian literature? And he said, are you kidding? This costs $5 million.
Right.
The typing costs $5 million. And I said, well, how did you get $5 million? He said, that guy sitting in the corner is David Packard Jr., Hewlett Packard
Correct.
Jr., He paid for it because he likes Greek. And I'm like, wow, I said, we got 300,000. We got almost 60 times more ancient literature. Let's put that in,
Right.
Just make me an appointment with him. He said, come on. He's like this. Later, their endowment became the largest in the United States.
I remember
and
that.
he said, you cannot get an appointment with this guy. Forget it. He said, forget it. You will never get an appointment with this guy. Right. And I tried and I tried and I tried. And I couldn't do it. And finally, I wrote a proposal. And I had a friend who worked at the Princeton Library. She was a student of she and her husband were students of my teacher. And she walked to he had an extra house in Princeton, like next to Einstein's house. And he had an extra house and he had an office there. And she banged on the window. He wouldn't answer the door. And she banged on the kitchen window. This is Lolly Gavisler. And she handed the proposal through the kitchen window to the wife. And then I called and I called and I called, and then his secretary said, okay, Mr. Packard got your note and your application, and you have 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes with him. Yeah. To his office on Nassau Street. So I got all these books. I got 2 suitcases ready of ancient books in suitcases. Right. And I went to the appointment, and I dressed up in a tie, and I got into his office, and he said, you got 5 minutes. And I unwrapped this book. I'm all nervous. I'm 20 years old or something. And I'm like, this, you see, this is the ancient book. And they're all gonna wear out, and we gotta rot. We gotta input them. Yeah. We gotta do it. What do you call that round thing? CD-ROM. We need a CD-ROM, And he had invented the CD-ROM for the Greek. Right. He invented it, and the reader was as big as the room. And I said, we need the CD-ROM,
It's amazing.
And he listened, and he didn't say anything, and I thought he was gonna kick me out. And he called his secretary. I'm gonna cry. And he said, cancel all my appointments for the day. Cancel the rest of my appointments for the day. He said, relax, let's go to lunch. You tell me what you need, and I'll do it. And
that was amazing.
And
it's the birth of the Asian Legacy Library.
So I said, we need $30,000. And he said, okay, you got it. Just here's the address. Just write this guy, and he'll give you the $30,000. And
that was the start.
We started. Now that what I did, there's a clever thing I did. I went to Korea, and I checked out how the input was done. And then I went to Thailand, to Mahidol University, and I got an agreement with them that they would type it. They
First
would type
Thailand. I didn't know that. Wow.
Then I called the monastery. I went to my monastery, and I said, I want a meeting of the board of directors. And I wisely held it in a hotel 6 hours away. They were captured. And
like up in Bangalore or somewhere.
In Bangalore, yeah. The Woodlands Hotel.
Oh, I know that place.
Yeah, and I said, I got them all in a room, and I said, I have this plan. We're going to input all the great books,
Yes.
And they said no. And I said, well, look at these photos from Korea.
Right.
I guess they're going to get the millions of dollars. And they're like, what? And I said, well, since you guys don't want to do it, I'll do it somewhere else, And they were like, we'll do it. And that's how we started. It was really funny.
It's amazing, like the spontaneity of every part of the equation to get it started.
Last part of the story. We won't waste Geshe candidates on your project.
Right.
We'll give you the dropouts and all the discipline problems. And it was the strangest group of bad boys you ever saw.
I know some of those bad boys.
And they started the input of, a million pages.
Seen those early photos.
Yeah. And some of them are still helping.
Yeah,
so.
they definitely are still going.
Tell us what's going on now, JB, with your ALL and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Geshe Michael, when we look at this 35-year history, there's so much to say about it. And now we're at this cusp, this beginning new point where we're creating literally a library online. And it's always been partially your dream to think about a virtual reality library where you actually can go into, the island of Manhattan and go into one of the buildings and through a window and open up a catalog, and then you would see the great works of a specific author. And we're not quite there yet, but there is this extremely 2.5 years in the making catalog system, literally like a library, like the old Dewey catalog of the U.S. system of a library, now going to be presented July 15th for the first time after. Cool. I guess maybe this is the first time of a new technology lift for Asian legacy libraries since the first decade of 2020 of 2000. So what's been going on so cool with our technology folks is that academia especially are now saying, whoa, this is going to change the landscape of how educational systems and the ancient wisdom of China, wisdom, or South India wisdom, or Nepal wisdom, generate a searchable database that will clearly help them translate more and much more data. So in our current situation, we only have about 1/5 of everything we've done, right? Like we've accumulated so much amazing scans and catalogs from various private collections and institutes. But now everything is going up for the first time, and I think it'll create excitement. The other part of this is the snow on the mountain, as we call ourselves, is always a part of how you have created the Diamond Cutter Institute, the Sedona College of International Management, the Asian Classics Institute, the Diamond Mountain University system, the YSI Yoga Studies Institute. So the more content we can provide in that library, the more that you and your translation group, the Diamond Cutter Classics groups, the Mixed Nuts, will have this amazing kind of, I call it a sports car. It's a very fast search engine, and through your guidance and the Mixed Nuts guidance, the way it's going to be searchable will be a new tool to apply to our data.
Can you tell some stories? Like you've been doing this Indiana Jones thing around the world. You've been running around the world. We always talk about inputting the ancient books, but it's a huge job just to find ancient books to input. So I wonder, how did you get started, for example, in the mountains of Ladakh? These are so high. The mountains. We were on a private plane flying into one of these places, and you and me were both throwing up in the back.
Yeah, and they didn't have those bags on the back seat.
Because of the Himalaya winds.
Right.
And I don't know.
Ladakh was really, again, we had the seeds to open up the whole system of collections within the north state of Ladakh in India. I remember how I was a little bit intimidated, quite frankly, because we had to sit in front of a board of about 15 or 18 decision makers that pretty much ran a lot of the Ladakh politics. And we only had about, as you say, 5 minutes, but we had about a half an hour. And I had a great translator from South India with me. And I was literally shaking because I felt like I was in front of the mafia. This feeling like, okay, what do you guys want from us? Mm-hmm. And we showed the St. Petersburg database.
Good,
And that, so we cataloged 140,000 titles in the St. Petersburg Institute of Oriental Manuscripts in the 90s with you.
Yeah, it took 12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
And here we were, with this opportunity to go to 53 collections throughout the Ladakhi region.
And these are ancient.
Rare, ancient.
These are very ancient.
Yeah.
These are old. These are older than Tibet.
Could be 500 to 800 years, right? Yeah. So they're listening, with these very stern, inexpressive faces, and I'm kind of shaking with, my first laptop showing them something. And then they huddled, and they said, we'll get back, give us 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then it happened. And they said, you're in. And so we trained 5 of their, kind of higher, more educated folks who had the language. Mm-hmm. So they had to have the Sanskrit language as well as maybe some of the Nepalese languages. Mm-hmm. And we sent them to be trained on how to catalog.
Wow. Yeah.
And then we bought them these amazing scanning machines that could do both sides of an 18 or 21 inch pecha. Mm-hmm. And
is that like this on the photo?
Oh, there it is, yeah. And then suddenly we were in business. We bought a used van, and they went, and they literally went from collection to collection for, I think, 5 years.
Wow! Oh my gosh!
And that catalog is still being, I think, used.
I've studied it.
You watch to see to find things.
It's very ancient.
And we need to go back there.
We're not done.
No,
we're not done there,
no,
but
we have to go back.
I mean, to be honest, we need money. We need money to go back.
Yeah, it's always the case where, infrastructurally we need to create the money and the technology and the training. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have to travel there to manage it as well. Yeah. But, I think in terms of where we're going with the Asian Legacy Library, it'll be something special that will be reachable to more people. And different cultural heritages will be involved now.
Mm-hmm. What are some that you're thinking of?
Well, we're looking, we have a collection in Mongolia right now that is Chinese historical collection, for instance. Wow. And we discovered one day letters from a Manchurian emperor explaining his plan to create an economy of kindness. Wow. And one of the visitors had tears in his eyes when he was reading this letter, and he said, this is amazing. Wow. So that's on our short map. Then we have a beautiful project in Nepal that is blooming, and this will definitely supplement our data with earlier transcriptions of commentaries. And then, of course, we have a lot of Sanskrit, Ayurvedic medical texts.
Yeah, big collection.
Something like 1.5 million scans, which I think Ayurveda is mainstream in the West pretty much as a viable substitute for a Western medical system.
I think you guys we still have to scan the Russian collection. We just made a catalog.
Yeah,
and they have a lot.
That's right.
They have a lot of the books from Dunhuang.
That would be amazing.
They have a lot of the great books from Dunhuang are there.
If we could work with the St. Petersburg group again, that would be. That's like going up to get to the snow on the mountain, and that's the struggle. A little bit to be very patient and try to diplomatically understand for their sake, a copy of a digital collection is essential for the future. We don't know, what could happen with collections to this day. And we've seen things disappear. So.
Yeah, I think your project, the story of your project is, these are 10-year projects, these are 15-year projects, and they need support. They need steady support. You can't shut the project down for a year because you couldn't fundraise and then start it up again. It doesn't work like that. You need 10, 20 years of funding. So that's partly what this Castle Rock Fund is.
And Castle Rock is going to be so essential because suddenly we will have at our disposal $75,000, $80,000 a year more. And that can go directly to the projects. So having free rent and infrastructure that allows our staff here to really function without the worry of overhead costs. We can go out to the field and find more wonderful manuscripts that will give the world a different view of what we think we've lost.
And libraries burn down.
Totally.
Libraries get flooded. Libraries fall apart. Bugs eat books.
Right.
It seems like they've been there for 1,000 years, so there's no big pressure, but it is a race against time, right?
I think so. Like, we bought fire extinguishers for the collection that we have in Mongolia. They had buckets of sand as their fire hazard situation. And our curator always smoked down there.
They also have leaks in the roof.
Yes, indeed. So we're grateful that this Castle Rock Fund will, not only ALL, but other organizations within the Worldview umbrella will be rent-free. That's a huge deal. That will save us probably $250,000 a year.
Cool. All right. Thank you, JB.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
Thanks, Gеше, Michael.
Yeah. Please help.